You want to find the problem that you solve, then grab hold of it, and this is the key to your value as a professional. It might seem like an employer perception can't possibly be formed in just 30 seconds, but it definitely can. All right, I know what you're thinking. Your tell me about yourself response is about the easiest response you have to come up with. So why worry about it? This is the soft pitch or the warm up. And yet, a Yale study found that snap judgments are made in as little as 10 seconds, and hiring managers assigned more or less lucrative salaries based on just those 10 seconds. Now, I say this not to worry you, but to illustrate the power of first impressions. And so, your tell me about yourself response is the very first response you'll be giving. So, it's literally the foundation of an employer's perception of you. Now, listen, if your brain just went, oh, shoot, then not to worry, because in the next several minutes, we are going to strategize a great first impression in your tell me about yourself response. We're going to start first with the big picture and target your work history to the company so that they feel your entire career has led to this one role at this one organization. And we're going to prime the employer with a sneak peek at your most compelling and most relevant stories. And then we're going to wrap up today by anticipating and addressing those questions and desires and worries and concerns they might have to build trust really early on. Okay, so first, let's target. Go ahead and grab the job posting for the interview, and you're going to review that and look for the core problem. Now, the reality is you may or may not need that specific job posting to identify the core problem because in each function, in each career, there's a specific core problem that solves. It's such a big picture problem that often you can use the same big picture problem for multiple positions. But let's assume you have the job posting. You're going to go ahead and grab it and identify the one core problem that you solve. This core problem is the main reason why it's completely worth it for an organization to pay your salary, plus your benefits, plus the cost to recruit and hire and train and develop you over time. Right now, I'm working with a fantastic, high stakes, high volume editor. And while at first it might seem difficult to find the $100,000 problem, I promise you it is always there. Otherwise, it just wouldn't make sense for the organization to pay the salary. Now imagine if our editor were not there. How many inconsistencies and errors and inefficiencies there would be in editing. I mean, it would cost well over that $100,000 in sales revenue alone, not to mention penalties and lawsuits. So the editor solves these problems. The editor upholds the reputation and the credibility of the organization. I mean, no matter how much great work is being done on the inside, it's kind of a waste if it appears wrong and messy and incorrect by those on the outside. So, this is your job. You want to find the problem that you solve, then grab hold of it. And this is the key to your value as a professional. Okay, so now you know the big picture problem. The next question is what three goals, KPIs, or outcomes solve this problem? So, for example, in the case of an editor where you're really looking to reduce errors, reduce inconsistencies and inefficiencies, the three goals or KPIs or outcomes might be well documented style guides, an effective revision cadence, or a high percent of accuracy or low error margins. Once you have the problem and also the three goals, KPIs, or outcomes, now it's time to dig into your career history. Ask yourself, what stories am I going to share in the interview related to these areas? And what you're going to do is first figure out what stories you want to share. That's a whole other conversation. But once you have these stories, pull the hook. This is the part they are most interested in. So while you don't have to have your stories completely drafted right now, just know what is the most important part of this story. Usually it's the outcome, the transformation, right? But sometimes it's the scope of your work or the notoriety of the companies you've moved forward or the complexity of your accomplishment. So make some decisions as to what is the most compelling piece of information I want to share. And in a perfect world, you'd have one or more stories from an early role, a mid level role, and then one of your more recent roles. And you can share these as you walk through your career history in your tell me about yourself response. So you might say something like, during my tenure at ABC Company, I managed 20 projects per week with a 99% accuracy rate. Or while at ABC Company, I created 15 style guides still in use today, upholding their reputation and the credibility of their multi-million dollar portfolio. So, this is basically a few different statements that you're going to have walking them through your career history, not in terms of positions as much as in terms of accomplishments directly related to the problem they need solved. Okay, are you with me? Wonderful. All right, up next, let's get into the employer's mind and anticipate the questions, the desires, and the worries and concerns. And then let's go ahead and address those in the very first few minutes of our interview. See, just like you have worries and desires and questions and concerns before an interview, the hiring manager has them too. And so, what we're going to do now is we're going to put on the hiring manager hat and the hiring manager glasses and review your resume, your LinkedIn, and even your application materials through their perspective. What questions come up? If you have a gap from 2023 to 2024, they might be asking themselves, what was going on during that time? Or if you're really accomplished recently, but you're not actually moving up, but you're taking a step down or maybe a lateral move, that's going to be a question for them too. So think about what you want to address and know that you don't always have to, call the elephant in the room. You can just ease their concerns. So for example, if there's a gap from 2023 to 2024 and they're wondering what's going on, we could address that in your resume well before the interview. But if you are already at the interview, you already submitted your resume, in your tell me about yourself question, you could mention something like, and for the last year, I have been XYZ, right? You can provide just a little bit of context. For the last year, I've been strengthening my skill set, taking classes on Udemy and Coursera, and getting a certification in X, right? So now you're kind of filling in that gap. All right, so now let's turn your attention from addressing their potential questions to their desires. Go ahead and grab that job posting again and ask yourself, what are the requirements and what are the desirables or preferred? You usually can see those in the job posting pretty clearly. And so once you see those, try to identify, what do I want to mention from these lists in my tell me about yourself question or response. So for example, let's say you're looking through and it says, I don't know, Microsoft Excel preferred, right? Depending on the position, there's all kinds of levels of Microsoft Excel. Some people are familiar with it, but they don't know anything beyond the typical entering and formatting. But you happen to know pivot tables and macros and all kinds of really advanced Excel features, right? And so what you can do is talk about those in just a quick one-liner. It doesn't have to be a long and extended story. You're just giving them a little sneak peek to let them know that you have a skill set that they put down as preferred on their job description. Now, if you're going to go one layer deeper, you can then ask yourself, what does my boss want? Right? So go ahead and find your boss online, whether or your future boss online, whether it's on LinkedIn, maybe there's an article about them, or maybe you can't find them anywhere, but the posting itself gives you just a couple of hints at what they're looking for. Ask yourself questions like, what do they like? Is there any indication, either on the posting or on their profile or anywhere else, as to a preference for a certain type of leadership philosophy or a method that they prefer or a way of working? All of these are little hints at what you might mention or how you might phrase your experience in your tell me about yourself question. Now, the last thing I think of here in this desire section is consider your experience and what value you bring that other candidates may not have. So, a couple of good examples of this are, for example, if you're bilingual, or maybe if you have a background that is technically not directly related to the role you're interested in, but brings that added value. So, for example, law, engineering, project management, medical field, or healthcare. Those are fields that are fairly technical. That you've got a lot of value that comes with that, and you can bring it into your new field, even if it's not in any of those industries. Another example is counseling. If you have a counseling background and you're going into a role that requires diplomacy and tact and good listening skills, you can package your counseling background in terms of those soft skills that are needed in this new position. So these are ways to slowly and subtly turn their attention toward what is desirable for them from your experience. See, a question I get asked frequently is, how can I overcome ageism in the job search? And one of the first things that comes to mind irrelated to their worries and their concerns, is more of the fact that this is actually a good thing for you. You have more experience and in a way that no one else can even pretend to have in the job search because you have more years of experience, you have the historical knowledge, you have the ability to weather the storm, and you also have just knowledge of being able to lead people from different generations in a way that someone younger in the pool just won't have. Now, either everyone in the pool is going to be the same age, and age isn't going to be an issue, or everyone in the pool is younger, and in that case, you have a unique value proposition nobody else has. So technically, you're in great shape. Now, the other way, though, let's think now in terms of addressing the worries and the concerns, right? The other way is to think of it this way: there's a candidate on one side of the table and an employer on the other side. The candidate might think, oh, this is ageism. They're thinking about my age. They're thinking about my age. However, rarely have I heard of an employer say, oh, it's their age. It's specifically their age. But there is an underlying thought process that is linked potentially to age. And that underlying thought process, typically from what I hear from, hiring leaders, it's typically something along the lines of, we have a really fast changing organization. Is this person going to be able to keep up with the fast pace of what we have going? This person that we want to bring in needs to have a lot of drive. Does this particular candidate have that level of drive? See, this question isn't as much about age as it is about energy. And so, what you can do is address those concerns without bringing up the elephant in the room. Because again, you have a unique value from your experience that if everyone in the pool is of the same age, then it's not about age at all. But if no one else is of the same age and everyone else is younger, then really you have something nobody else has, right? So don't bring an elephant in the room by talking about age. It is absolutely not appropriate for them to ask you about age either. But instead, what you can do is you can share your drive, your enthusiasm, and evidence of recent high performance. That's going to immediately kind of bring down their guard, make them forget about any part of that stamina or energy question, because now you've immediately told them, oh, this assumption that you might be making, absolutely not true. The other thing you can do is you can express your plans to make progress and make a meaningful impact at their organization. And that's going to help them to see that you are ready to go, ready to hit the ground running. Okay, so altogether, you're first going to target the role by identifying the one core problem you solve or the one core problem they need solved and identifying the three goals, KPIs, or outcomes to solve it and identifying your stories that show evidence of your ability to be able to meet these goals, KPIs, and outcomes, and therefore solve the core problem. And then you're going to figure out exactly how you want to prime the interviewer with a sneak peek at the most compelling parts of your stories to gain early investment and trust. And then third, you're going to decide what potential questions, desires, concerns, or worries you want to address and how you want to address it so that you can help them let their guard down and open up to the possibility of bringing you onto their team. And so stay tuned for episode 110 in 2 weeks, where we're going to meet back here and create your start to finish tell me about yourself response. For now, though, you can head over to episode 43 if you want to learn how to turn your interview mistakes into opportunities that are going to make you stand out. Now, remember, my friend, it might seem like an employer perception can't possibly be formed in just 30 seconds, but it definitely can. And you have more influence in that process than you really think. So keep going, keep improving, and know that we are cheering you on. We're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. If you found this episode helpful, please tap the 5-star review on the show's homepage in your podcast app. It would absolutely make my day, and it helps others discover the Uncommon Career Podcast. Now, to download your free career resources and learn how I help seasoned professionals land amazing offers in as little as 90 days, click on the link in the description or go to theuncommoncareer.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.